Are you ready to feel inspired by hearing other people's stories of how they got from point A to point B? What helped them? What challenged them? What did they learn? What might they know that you haven't yet explored? No matter where you are today on your life journey, there is always hope, and you will always be amazing. My name is Kim O'Neill, and this show will inspire you to keep going. You and your life are worth it.
You're listening to the Everyday is a New Day show. Inspirational conversations with movers and shakers about moving forward and choosing to embrace a positive outlook. Because that which breaks us becomes a catalyst for what makes us. Now, here's your host, Kim O'Neill.
Before we get into today's show, I have a real quick announcement. My newest book, You Are Loved, an inspired meditative visual journey, became a #1 Amazon bestseller in April 2019. We have received rave reviews for this one-of-a-kind meditative experiential book that has 39 stunning original photos of Key West, Florida, taken by my co-author, and is paired up with a written guided meditation I wrote specifically to deliver this simple yet so important message that you are loved. This book is a fantastic book for yourself, a loved one, and even as a coffee table book. We're also being told about the success and interest of people using this book with their kids and now introducing them to meditation. To read more about the book and purchase a copy directly through me, simply go to KimO'NeillCoaching.com. That's KIMONEILL coaching.com. Click on the You Are Loved book tab and then send me an email if you'd like to purchase a copy before they're sold out. And now, here's today's awesome guest interview. I'm excited to share with you today's guest, Lisa Marie Platske. She has a really fascinating background. It's not only what she does, but who she is that is inspiring and a true leader. So I want to share with you a little bit about her background, but then we're going to let her elaborate and share the rest. So Lisa Marie Platske left her action-packed life as a federal law enforcement officer to become the CEO of international leadership training and consulting company Upside Thinking, Inc. She's an award-winning leadership expert and takes her law enforcement journey, which began on the piers in New York and ended post 9/11, and shares what exceptional leaders do differently. She shares why connection is the new currency and how to build a winning strategy to get big opportunities. She is a certified master coach, has coached mission-driven managers and executives from 3 continents on how to position their expertise using her 7 pillars of leadership, and is the author of 6 books, including her 2 #1 international bestsellers, Connection, the New Currency, and Turn Possibilities into Realities. She is a member of the Forbes Coaches Council and serves on the executive board of Project Forgive, as well as the Executive Advisory Council for Leadership California, and is also on the board for the Evolutionary Business Council. And so with that, here's today's interview with Lisa Marie Platske. Welcome to the show, Lisa. How are you doing today?
I am fabulous, Kim. Thanks so much for having me. So excited to be here.
I am so excited to have you here. It's truly an honor. You know, I love the diversity of the people that I interview. You do so many things. You speak in so many places. I really want to know, how did you get to where you are today?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'd love to know that too.
You know, to the degree that you're willing to, what you're willing to share, I'd love for you to be able to share, you know, what you've learned that's empowered you to not only go into law enforcement, but then become this public figure that is so good at being vulnerable and authentic on stages and really connecting with people, and yet still standing in your feminine power and doing such a great job. So I want our audience to hear all of it.
Oh, thank you so much, Kim. And you know, I made that comment because so much of my journey has really been about following the breadcrumbs. I tell people that I'm the accidental entrepreneur. I wasn't the kid who grew up going, oh my gosh, I want to have a business. Oh my gosh, I want to write a book. That was not me. And there are colleagues of mine where that is their story. That is their truth. They knew when they were 5 years old at the lemonade stand that they were going to be an entrepreneur. And for me, I spent so much time being afraid of getting it right. Like, Was I going to get the A in school? Oh my gosh, what happened if I got the A minus? I mean, that just, seemed to be just not good enough. And then from that, what was I going to do? I didn't have the plan to go into college. I wasn't looking at going into college. I just had a friend who happened to say that was something important to do. So I ended up taking that leap of faith. And then when I was there, there was a lot of fear around that and what job to get. And so as I look at many of the transition moments in my life, that's why I say I was the accidental entrepreneur. So much of it has been about following the breadcrumbs and being in the place of having things work out with the breadcrumbs really only happened when I moved really from fear to faith, trusting and believing that everything was going to work out for me. And so you ask about what did I learn and what came from this? And I was someone who did often call the police as a kid for domestic violence reasons that were going on in the house. And that happened both in my house of where my mom lived and my stepfather. And then it also happened when I would go and visit my grandparents. And so this was not for me, the element around just being safe and being out of fear, well, that was just swirling around me. And so you create stories about who you are and what you can do and what you're capable of. And my stories were often that were not about me going to be successful. The likelihood in my story was that I was going to be a statistic. And so the lesson learned was that you can do anything. When I look at myself, you can do anything and have anything that you want if you actually believe that you can. And I'm living proof of that. And being the accidental entrepreneur to go into law enforcement may have made sense to some people. It didn't make sense to me. I didn't have anybody in my family in law enforcement. I didn't have anybody. Kim, hello. I didn't even know that at the end of the academy, they were actually going to give me a gun to take home. What? Yes. Okay. Meanwhile, I'm shooting every single day. And I say that it was this disbelief that they had trusted me with this. It was oh my gosh. And then the fact that the credentials said this officer possesses integrity. And I was how do they know?
Oh.
How do they know? How does that, how is that really true?
Wow. Okay. So you've shared so much richness right there. Lisa, I want to know, what is the story that you, to the degree that you can recall, what is the story that you did believe about yourself when you were a kid?
That God forgot about me.
Wow.
That was really the story, that God forgot about me. That everybody else had I went to Catholic school and everybody had a mom and a dad, and there were 2 kids in the entire school that came from divorced families. And in my neighborhood, it was considered something that was more of a disease. Gosh, you'd be contagious to be hanging out with a kid who had family that was divorced. Now today it's sort of sad because my cousin went to school and she was an anomaly because her parents are together. So that, that really broke my heart. But for me, it was, the story was that God forgot about me. Otherwise, my situation would have been different. And it wasn't, my mom was a single mom who did a lot and loved and cared for my sister and I. So there wasn't that there was, that I didn't have that. And my grandparents were the epitome of love personified, to each other. So it wasn't that. It was that just because you believe something doesn't necessarily mean that it's rooted in truth, or it's your perception of how you translate whatever situation is going on in your life. And so it's like being in business and then not getting the client. Well, you can tell yourself the story, well, it's because I wasn't good enough, or it's because they really found out the truth about me. I'm really not that smart, or I'm really not that good or talented, or whatever the story is. Or you can say, wow, like everything's happening for me. And I'm so glad that that door closed, because that obviously wasn't the right client for me. And it depends on the story you choose. And my learning was to learn how to see the glass as being half full instead of half empty, because my perception was that I did something that these things were going on in my life, like that it was because I wasn't enough to have something else show up for me.
So knowing that you went to Catholic school and believed that God forgot about you, what was that like? Being around religion and seeing love in the relationships in your home, your grandparents, but then having this belief that God forgot about you. And I don't know about you, but I do connect love to God. So was there some additional message about love, or that all this stuff around you somehow doesn't apply to you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That, and really it not applying to me is that, well, where do you learn about that? Like you say, there's the element of God. And what I'll say is that it was a long, windy journey for me. And I had a real awakening when I was in my 30s. I think I was 30. And that led me to recognizing that really, well, so much of this was story, right? So much of this was story and self-imposed, and that really all there is love. That's it. And that part has led me, I am a happily practicing Catholic now. So religion, some people will speak about being more spiritual than being more religious. And I have no judgment one way or another on what anyone believes. And I'm not looking to convince anyone that what I believe. I just see it now in looking back, that every experience that I had and every person that was put in my life through the lens of which I look now, that there were angels sent along the way. There were people that were sent in my life, teachers, family members. There were people from when I was 5 years old that were there, that were sent specifically to care for me. And when you focus on the things that aren't working, when you're in breakdown in your business and you look at your cash flow and you go, how could this, I'm not that stupid. How could I be in this place? Or you're in the place of something happening in your life and not understanding why that person that you love is so sick. Whatever it is, there's a variety of lenses to choose which to see things from. And in that moment, when I didn't have tools or wasn't equipped at the age of 5 and 6 and 7 and didn't have anyone else to teach it to me, my lens was that of lack. My lens was that of fear. My lens was that of God forgot about me. And I'm able to now look back and go, oh my gosh, not only was I not forgotten, but I had angels sent every step of the way that actually opened doors and created opportunities for me in order for me to have the life that I have today, have the business I have today, have the freaking amazing clients I have today. And so those lessons, those experiences, they taught me about compassion. They taught me about how love does always win. They taught me about kindness, and they taught me about really when you see someone hurting, that it generally is about fear, and it generally is about not being able to see something. And I choose to be in conversation with myself when something happens to look from that place now. And I've had some amazing wins and built an incredible leadership training company where I get to do training internationally all over the world, both speaking and coaching. And at the same time, not every day is a party day. There's days when stuff goes massively wrong. And the lens in which I see it from is very different, because I trust that everything happens for me. Everything happens in divine right timing, and that it's all conspiring for my greatest good. And that allows me to see and run my business, and also even to have operated in as a federal law enforcement officer differently than had I kept that same belief from when I was 10 years old.
You are the epitome of what this show is about, and thank you so much for being here. So,
every day is a new day, right?
I love that. It's just, I love interviews like this because it reminds me, like, this is what I love. This is what I want to share, and I hope anyone listening is really able to take this in on a deeper level, that you can go from one place in your life that may seem, I mean, this is my word, not Lisa's word, but might seem like a hopeless, dark space, right? I'm forgotten about. And then completely flip the script, and you're a true leader, you know, who's able to teach and guide others and be this light for others who may be in that space of not thinking there's anywhere else to go than where they presently are. So I want to know, what is the breadcrumb that led you to thinking, oh, I'm going to go into law enforcement? What's that breadcrumb?
That's fabulous. Thanks, Kim. And Kim, I do want to say one thing before getting into that piece, and that is that I don't want it to paint the picture and saying that it was easy. Like, I don't want to paint the picture and say, oh yeah, this is just, you just sort of sit there and believe, and then all of a sudden magic things happen, because that's not realistic. This is actually intentional work, and it's choice, and there are lots of crossroads. And so I want to presence that, because that also leads to the breadcrumb with law enforcement, which law enforcement was not the natural choice. It didn't make sense. And I wasn't going to go to college. I didn't have anyone in my family who went to college. It was a girlfriend who her dad happened to be a dean at a university, and her mom was college educated. And so for her, the expectation was she went to college. And we were good friends and had a conversation. And she said, what are you going to do? And I said, I guess I'll get a job. And she's like, you're not going to go to college? And I was like, didn't really think about it. And so my mom went to some classes with me that the local newspaper gave on how to apply to college, that led me to major in criminal justice. And I only majored in criminal justice because I had this sort of defiant attitude that if a guy could do it, so could I, right? And that just came from perhaps growing up and witnessing some of the things that I saw with guys, that it was sort of like, I'm going to prove whatever I had to nonsensically prove. I'm not even sure, what that was. But so for me, it was like, I'm going to go into a field that's a male dominated field, and I'm going to succeed. Awesome. And so that led to criminal justice. But I didn't get into a job. Like, I graduated and there was a recession. And so I ended up going into banking, and then had just applied, and I ended up going in, looking at juvenile probation, and then looking at adult probation. And I had a terrible interview with adult probation, or with the psychologist and everything. It was not good. They make you draw those things. I don't know if they had you do that, but they have you draw things, and then they like run it through a psychologist. And so it's like, if you draw in the tree, if you draw the hole in the tree that the squirrel was come out, then it means like there's something wrong with your personality. Like, there's all these things to say that like you're maladjusted and you should. And so I didn't do very well, like on the tests. And then when I was in the interview, when I was like being fingerprinted, the guy had made some really sexual harassing comments about women. Like it was just not this like pleasant, happy experience.
Wow.
And so I was in banking a couple of years, and I got a letter from the federal government saying, okay, like the freeze is lifted, like, would you like a job? And I was really happy where I was, because I had, had gotten a promotion. I had a lot of autonomy, and it was good. And then I was like, well, if you don't step into what you majored in now, you probably won't, like, it's not like 10 years will go by and it'll get easier and you'll say, okay, I'll take the leap of faith. And I had only gotten my driver's license at 21, and I was not, oh my gosh, and I wasn't so like great about driving. And so this job was going to be like, the interview was in Newark, New Jersey, which was an hour and a half to 2 hours away in like heavy traffic. And I had never driven on a road that was more than 2 lanes. And so I was like, that might be really interesting to do. And like, even that, like, even just to get the job from that was like, hello, are you kidding me? So, so I end up in the job not really being sure what job I'm even saying yes to, because I didn't really, like, so much time had passed. I didn't even remember why I applied.
Okay, so what I hear is you have said yes to so much change in your life.
Yes, breadcrumbs.
Seriously. Just a 2-lane, I've only been on a lane, road with 2 lanes, and now you're going into heavy traffic. Like, that's huge for some people. I remember those days, like, right? Like, oh no, I don't know if I can drive on this road. Okay, so you're in law enforcement, and then at some point you transition away from that and start your own business.
Yes.
What was that like? To me, that's another huge change. And what were the feelings that came up for you around that? And like, how did that evolve?
Well, that happened partially in law enforcement. So I was involved in law enforcement in leadership, loved leadership. And I had taught at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. I had developed curriculum with outside consultants in a variety of areas of leadership that were then taught at the at the Leadership Development Center post 9/11. I was really steeped in leadership. And I met my husband when I was in the government, and we were seated alphabetically at a leadership training. His last name was Platske. My last name was Plansky. They seat you alphabetically. I'd be Plansky if I hyphenated, so I don't.
That's great.
And when I met my husband, it was both like, I don't want a serious relationship. He said, good, I don't want a serious relationship. And a year and a half later, he proposed. And we had only seen each other every couple of weeks, because I was living in the New York area, and he had been living in DC. And then he accepted an assignment in California, and I accepted one in Georgia and then Texas. And so I had been living in Dallas, Texas. And like I said, we'd see each other every maybe 2-3 weeks. So you figure the number of times we'd seen each other over the course of a year and a half, it's not like there's lots of them. And when he proposed, I just thought we'd keep our lives the way they were. Like, I had been getting promotions and doing things. He was, in a great place in his career. And I had this awareness at that point that even though there had been conversation, like, perhaps someday you'll be assistant commissioner, and perhaps, there were assignments that I was given that were great assignments. There was this piece of me that recognized that so often people make decisions on money, on influence, on affluence, not influence, on affluence, on how to keep up with the Joneses. And very rarely do people make decisions based on what they value. And so what I was clear was that if I was going to marry this person, that it probably would make sense for me to invest in the relationship. Like, then the relationship, what I'm saying is the relationship is a higher priority than whatever it is that I'm doing in my life, because I'm actually stopping what I'm doing, and I'm moving. I'm moving in this other direction, meaning not solo and with a partner.
Right.
And that choice led me to say to my husband, I think I should quit, because I'm not really sure how we're going to have competing careers. Like, I'm not really sure how you're going to do your job that requires 24/7 energy, and I'm going to do my job and worry about the next promotion and the next opportunity, and we're going to be able to do this well together. And that was such an important conversation, because people thought I was crazy. Like, I picked up the phone and gave my 2 weeks notice, and people thought I either had to be sick, I had to be pregnant, I had to be like, no one was like, this has to be like your life choice decision. Everyone thought it had to be a problem. And so I was lost at first when you say, like, how did it lead you to opening your business? I knew that I loved leadership, but I was in this crossroads where I didn't really need to work, so I didn't have to take a job. And I interviewed. I was actually recruited to run 5 police academies, and that were housed under one location. And I looked at other places, and what I realized, back to that original part, is freedom, fun, and flexibility are important to me, so that I get to spend time with my family, my friends, and my faith. And the best way to create freedom and fun and flexibility is by working for yourself. Now, my mentors said that was crazy, that I should apply to jobs, I should work there for 2 years, and I should get some credibility in the community, some expertise, be known as, this for these police academies or whatever else I chose to do. And then once I was known, then open a business. And there was a part of me said, well, that's just ridiculous, because you're already taking an opportunity that you know that you're not going to stay in. Like, you're already going to close the door on something that you're opening. And so what are you doing, like, with those 2 years of your life? Like, why? So that more people can say you're great? But it was a transition, Kim, because I was used to being celebrated for my leadership and who I was. And I stepped into a role as my husband's wife, being known as his wife. People would say, oh, you're Jim's wife. Oh, you're Jim's wife. And there was a part of me that wanted to scream and said, I got my master's degree before he did. Like, there was a part that wanted to, like, tell everybody how accomplished and degreed I was. And it made me realize how much we attach ourselves and our sense of worth to what we do, and how important it was for me to be comfortable and grateful and honoring of me being me in the role as wife.
So wait, quick question. So did that come after you left law enforcement, or as you were in the process of making the decision to leave?
After I left law enforcement, I was in the process of opening my business.
Okay.
And I had that realization that I needed to get clear on who I was before I opened up something else, so it didn't create my own value and worth.
Okay.
Like to be able to open your business for the sake of you really believe in what you're doing, versus I need something else to be able to say, I'm $1 million business owner and I created from scratch. Like what does that mean? Like what is that? Then there's still this emptiness of who are you?
Right. So then you did decide to open up your business, and what shifted to solidify that this is the next step for me?
Well, like I said, that was really it was the breadcrumbs. It was like getting clearer and clearer, and then listening. And I ended up having my husband had to go and speak at an event at the Chamber of Commerce. And so it was like, isn't that interesting? And I didn't know anything about chambers of commerce. I knew nothing about business. I majored in criminal justice. I never took a business course. So I didn't know anything. And through that, I met someone, and it became this sort of series of breadcrumbs that led me to having a business card and showing up places, and all of the things that I learned in law enforcement that allowed me to rise very quickly through the ranks and be the fastest promoted officer are the same positioning techniques that I used to open my business. And so I landed my first client. It was a $50,000 coaching and speaking gig from showing up at an event and having a conversation with someone. And it was a breadcrumb. It was really, it was, okay, so I'm clear what I always tell people, magic questions are, who are you? What do you want? And why does it matter? Those three questions. If you can answer those, then you're good. And so I had to get to the point of answering who was I, because I was so attached to my job as to who I was. And once I figured that out, being able to say, okay, what do I want? And it was so rooted into, I'm not looking to be an international leadership expert. I was looking to be a good wife, and I was looking to have freedom and fun and flexibility. And through that, leadership was the avenue, and having an international leadership training company where I did coaching and consulting and mentorship programs was an avenue. But the what I wanted was tied to all of the personal pieces. And then the why does it matter is because it's what's going to give me the greatest degree of happiness, success, and meaning. And so being able to answer those three questions, none of it was tied to, geez, I'm going to write 7 books. I didn't even want to write 1 book. I'm going to have an event for 11 years. I announced on the year 2, I stood on stage and said, this is the last year we're doing the event. And people came up to me and said, we'll help you create it for the next year.
Wow.
That's what happened. I did not, that's following the breadcrumbs. I did not ever, with any of the pieces, say, I want to do that. And that's why I go like, okay, follow the breadcrumbs. Live in surrender.
So, okay, so I love that. So you didn't say you wanted to do that, but you followed the breadcrumb. So I'm wondering if, as you're becoming aware of the breadcrumb, oh, I'm thinking I'm quitting, but other people want more. Was a desire burst within you as to help you take those next steps to actually then creating, what this breadcrumb was leading you towards? Or was there ever a part where you're like, well, the breadcrumb's going this direction, but I don't really want to go there? Like,
that's a fabulous question. And the reason why it's such a fabulous question is that the piece that most people assume is that when you get, quote, told to go somewhere, that it's someplace that you want to go. More often than not, I'm scared or it doesn't make sense. Like it's like it didn't make sense to call up my dad and say, I'm quitting the government where I get a salary every week. And it doesn't matter how sick or tired I am, I still get my 6-figure salary for the year. And oh, by the way, I have all these benefits. And I'm going to quit to no figures and open up a business when I don't have any business background. And my closest friend is 3,000 miles away. And oh, by the way, I think that this might be a great idea to do this. Like there's nothing that makes sense about this. So much of it is when you follow the breadcrumbs, you're taking a leap of faith and trusting the net's going to appear. And sometimes it appears faster. Sometimes I lean into something and I get a clear yes, like this is what you're supposed to do. And then and then I lose money, like something not so good happens. And then what happens is the lesson or the experience takes me to someplace better than if I would have gone there in the first place and had everything, I have every I dotted and every T crossed. And so the belief that most people have is that when you follow breadcrumbs, when you're in the space of, oh, this door is opening, this window is opening, it must be good. That's not necessarily true. It's the belief that everything is happening and conspiring for my greatest good. And in the moment, there may not be an understanding of it, and there may not be even clarity around it, and it may not even work out in the way that I wanted it to or envisioned it to. And what I am clear of is that where I'm standing today, I could never have planned it out myself, that I would own an international leadership training company, that I would sit on the Forbes Coaches Council, that I would be the president of global nonprofit Project Forgive, that I would sit on the board of the Evolutionary Business Council with evolutionary leaders from all over the world, that I would be someone who gives a percentage of what I earn to organizations that mean something to me and get to contribute, that I would get to hire people and have a whole team. Like I can go on, like the list could, like it just could be that I have had an event that people have come to for, this will be 12 years, that people come to from all over, have been to from different parts of the world. Like that to me is sitting as that little kid who thought that God forgot about me. Like I couldn't have mapped it out. Now I'll tell you, like I said, some people, I've got friends who say, I knew when I was 7 that I was going to be the CEO of, such and such. That wasn't me. And so when I speak about having a plan, the plan is really around understanding who you are, what you want, and why it matters. The plan isn't map out the next 5 years and have every step figured out to how you're going to get there. Doors open, doors close, and they're scary and they don't make sense often. And I'm still willing, because I trust that it will work out for me. Because every day is a new day.
With everything you've said, I come up with like 5 new questions I want to ask you, but then in the process of that, you like intuitively answer 4 of them or something, so trust is clearly a huge piece of your journey and what you just shared with us. But also I really want to highlight how you talked about leaning into. I feel like that might be a tip for people if they're in that space of going, well, this door is opening over here, but I'm not so sure about that. But maybe if they just take a moment to lean into it, they could get a better sense of if that's the right direction for them or not. What are your thoughts about that leaning into piece?
I love that. And I love the leaning into, and I have tools in my toolbox and resources. And that is, that's a big part of it as well, is that leaning into is not just me leaning into, but it's also speaking out loud. And what I find is that as someone who gives space to verbally processing, I get my own downloads as to whether or not that makes sense. And the other thing is energetically, some people, they'll use muscle testing, or they'll use various forms of energetic testing for their bodies. If it's not something, if you're listening and you're not familiar with that, you can do some research or send Kim or myself a message on that. We'll be happy to give you resources. But the one for me is using the pendulum. And I have someone that I call, who happens to be like, I don't sit and do it myself, because what I find is that when I pendulum test or muscle test, I can fool myself or trick myself into giving myself the answer that I want. And so I use an independent resource where I have a girlfriend, colleague, partner, who does this. And she's a nonviolent communication expert, and this just happens to be something that she's gifted in.
Nice.
And we get on a call, a video call, and we ask the questions together, and she's the one that holds the pendulum. Now I say my name, I'll say, I'm Lisa Marie Platske, or I'm Joe Schmo, and then we get the yeses and the nos. And I deeply apologize if you're not tracking this and you're listening in. Just bear with me for a minute. So that's a tool and a resource that I'll use to say, what does my soul want in this moment? And sometimes I will listen. Like sometimes, like I got a yes on something on a program that didn't make sense, and I jumped full in. And I got a yes to attend a conference, and I didn't go. And so it was a personal choice that I looked at my schedule and said, I just can't. So it's not like I live and die by by the pendulum. By my soul
Right.
is giving me guidance and direction. So when I look at the lean in is me listening. The lean in is me verbally processing. The lean in is me having other people reflect back what they've heard me say. The lean in is me checking in with my soul with these other tools that come from outside sources. One of the other things is I have these Archangel Michael cards, and sometimes I will reach in and draw a card with that. I'll end up going to daily mass and being in prayer over something and hear a one word, a response. So the lean in is many, many, many different aspects of paying attention to the breadcrumbs and ensuring that this is really guidance that I'm getting and not me creating. Because if it were me, I would be creating the comfortable little like nobody goes, yeah, let's jump off a cliff and see where this takes us and hope the net appears, with regards to getting into law enforcement, getting out of law enforcement, doing any of the other things that allow you to be judged. When you have a business, you're out there, people judge you, and who would want that? It would be easier to just be quiet and just to stay at home and have the nice simple life. And so the leaning in is, what am I creating around this, and is this really where I'm to go?
Thank you for sharing all that. My audience is very diverse, and I love that piece where you check in with yourself and your guidance to know which direction, and then bringing it back to, even if you get a yes, you still have the choice. It's always still up to you to decide. I love it. So Lisa, who are the clients that you work with?
I am a magnet for trailblazers. So people who they've got this realization that their soul is calling, and they are looking to make a bigger positive impact in the world, a bigger difference in the world. And they're doing this job or they're in this business and they're like, there's something else. There's like something else for me. And the reason why they haven't stepped out is because they don't want to have to change who they are. And so those are my people, trailblazers who want to not have to change who they are because they happen to be just divinely and perfectly created. However, they're clear that there's something else for them. So those are my people.
And you work with them. How do you work with them? In one-on-one and groups?
Yes, both. Okay. Both. So for some people, it's, they prefer a one-on-one experience. And I love the group experience because the brilliance when you get people together to share their wisdom and their areas of expertise can be incredible. And we're all wired different, so it's perfect either way. So yes.
Well, and you know what, and that brings me back to something you said earlier on. Something I love about you is, you talked earlier about how you're a practicing Catholic and, the journey you went through on that. But what I love is that you are so accepting and open to people. You don't need other people to have the same religion or the same beliefs as you. You are open to working with people from all different backgrounds and faiths, and it's all good. That's my takeaway from you. Is that
Thank you. And it is, because love always wins. So it doesn't,
Yes.
That's it. If you operate in love, it really, there's no barrier or separation between what someone believes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so you've got this amazing event that you've put on now for 11 years, coming upon the 12th year. And would you like to share a little bit about that event?
Oh my gosh, I would so love to, because it is just, that is my calling. I asked last year, was it last year? Yeah, it was the beginning of last year. And I was like, okay, so I'm done with this event. I'm not doing it anymore. And I was sitting in Costa Rica, and I heard God's voice saying, like, this is yours to do. And I was like, what's mine to do? And he said, design your destiny live. And I was like, no, I'm not doing it anymore. And yet here I am, because after that conversation, I really am clear and have gotten the message more times than I can count that this is mine to do. And so Design Your Destiny Live is a 3-day event in Manhattan Beach, California at the end of January 23rd through 25th in 2020. I love the event. It's a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and we spend 3 days, 3 wonderful days going into content around 7 pillars of leadership that is really designed for trailblazers and change makers. And you get a safe space to be in both vulnerable leadership and walk away with your own plan and be able to be loved on with people from the community. And I can't say enough about the magic that happens in the room. And
I'll add on to that. Yeah. So you do a fantastic job of creating a safe space. It is a very unique event. There are other 3-day events out there who might, guide people through the similar, business or personal journeys, but you have to be in the room to experience how it's unique and different because and I can't really describe it beyond that other than you have to be there because I didn't really understand it until I was there myself. And such a wonderful environment to be in with you, but everyone else who was there participating and on their own journey. And there was such connection. I know you have this international bestseller that you've written about connection, but it's also emulated within the space of your event. And anyway, so I highly recommend it. I finally got to go this last year, and I'm looking forward to going again the next event.
Thank you. And thank you so much for saying that. I've met with people before and that's what they say, well, what is it that makes it different? And like, tell me in the marketing material what makes it different. And I'm like, it's so hard to put into words, like to capture an emotion.
Yes.
To express the emotion of what's happening. It's not a tangible, it's an expressed. And I believe it's the reason why we get people who come back year after year to be able to have that connection with other people in the room and take this journey for those 3 days. And some of them continue on, will work with me for the rest of the year. And some of them will just simply come back the next year to be in the space with the people that they've connected to, with their family, with their Design Your Destiny family. And that is hard when people go, well, what do you mean you can't tell me what it is? It's not looking to keep it a secret. It's just simply, it's hard to articulate what actually transpires in the transformation, in the safe space, really from the morning of day one. So it doesn't take until the 3rd day for that to happen. And so people are going to lunch and dinner together, and business is happening, and people are partnering, and opportunities are being created, and it's happening out in the audience, not simply from what's going on stage.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely an energy, and there's a level of acceptance among people from all these different backgrounds that we're in this together. That's
yes,
what I recall. So
because they're trailblazers.
Yes.
They're trailblazers.
So Lisa, what's the best way for people to connect with you and to find out more about your event or your coaching, how they can connect with you after this?
That's fabulous. So my website is Upside Thinking, and that's Upside, SIDE, and the word thinking, THINKING.com. So upsidethinking.com. And that's where you can find out more. I'm also on Facebook and LinkedIn as primary social media platforms. And you can find out more about my business and my work and connect with me at any time at Lisa Marie at upsidethinking.com. I love people, so I love to hear from people.
Oh, well, and your love for people shows. And I just thank you so much for being here today and sharing everything that you did. I know we still only barely scratched the surface of who you are and what you have to offer your audiences and your clients and your readers, but it's an honor to just hear you speak and share your journey and what you've learned. So thank you so much for being here today, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Kim. It's been a delight. It's been an honor. It really has.
Thank you for listening today. If you found value in this episode, be sure to rate and review it on iTunes and subscribe so you can continue to be inspired and feel supported on your journey forward. Remember that every day truly is a new day. The more you practice saying yes to yourself, being open to your life's gifts through your lived experiences, the more you find yourself in the rhythm and flow of life. And that's just the beginning of how much more beauty is ready to unfold for you. Subscribe to the Every Day is a New Day show on iTunes and connect with me after the show over on Facebook on the Every Day is a New Day show and coaching page, where I also go live with many of my guests on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Or follow the show on Instagram at Every Day is a New Day show. Let me know what you're taking away from today. I'd love to know. I'm your host, Kim O'Neill, and I look forward to connecting with you next time.